My name is Jose, and it's great to have you. Welcome. Now, what is early childhood trauma? Um, I'm sure you heard of trauma before, right? It can happen at any given stage in our lives. We can experience trauma, right? But today, I want to talk to you about what makes early childhood trauma so particularly harmful to the child, right? Um, so the reason for this, to start with, right? Where, when does early childhood trauma uh, happens, right? We know it happens in childhood, right? But specifically, what part of childhood? Um, we're talking from birth to age 6. That is considered early childhood, right? And anything that's traumatic basically means that uh, is threatening, right? It feels threatening to the child, right? It feels like his or her physical safety is threatened, right? Or it could be, uh, you know, it could be either that is threatening to the child or that is threatening to someone the child loves. All right. Um, like, uh, for example, if the mother, if the mother is being, uh, if she's the victim of domestic violence, right? If the mother is the victim, or if the father is the victim, right? The important thing is that the child loves this person, right? This person has been taking care of the child, and the child witnesses this person being abused, right? Or assaulted. Then the child is going to be traumatized, right? Um, I'll give you an example of that. Uh, when my brother was, when my older brother was, a newborn, during that time up until he was, I think, around 1 or 2, right? Up like 1 to 2 years, right? From birth to 2 years old. In that time frame, my brother witnessed my father physically assault my mother, right, on a consistent basis, because he was a mean drunk, and he was a physically abusive person, especially when he was drunk. And my brother experienced that. He ex- he my mother related to us that he saw it, he was there, he witnessed it. So that definitely traumatized my brother. Uh, my brother, he, you know, it was hard, right? It was a hard childhood, right, for all of us, because we all live in the same household. But my brother remembers that. He actually remembers when my father was assaulting my mother, and for that reason, he never got along with my father. And and what other ways did it affect him? Um, he had a substance abuse issue throughout his life, right? He became addicted to hard drugs like heroin and cocaine, and then ultimately it took his life. He died of an overdose at age 30. So we can see clearly how he was affected, right, in early childhood, right, by simply witnessing my father abuse my mother, right? And let me add to that, right? Because I was abused myself. I was abused by my mother. And he saw that too, right? He witnessed that as well. And that also affected him. It also had an impact on him, right? And so throughout his life, right, he dealt with all these emotions, right? These emotions of fear, anger, depression. So he did the what he knew, right? The only thing he knew how to do to heal that pain, right, was through the use of drugs, right? That ultimately, took his life at age 30. Um, so that is what can happen, right? When the child witnesses a loved one being abused, right? Now, one more thing that I want to add is that the trauma could happen even before birth. Um, it could happen while the baby is still in the womb, right? Now, I left you a link to an article that you could read uh, that talks about how the studies have been done that show that while the baby is still in the womb, they can respond to what's going on, right? They respond to how the mother is feeling, right? They feel that, right? Now, they show that when the mother sings, right, the baby responds in a good way, in a good way. And when the mother is arguing with the father, the baby reacts in a stressful way, right? They have shown with by taking sonograms of the baby that they have seen the baby cringe when the parents are arguing. All right, so even at that even at that stage in their life, right? They are still in the womb, and I'm talking about as soon as the second trimester. As soon as the second trimester, they have noticed the baby, right? React to what's going on in the outer world. Okay, and let me use my life as an example to show that this is so. Um, Now, like I mentioned, my parents used to argue a lot, fight a lot. My father was very, very physically abusive, even when my mother was pregnant, right? And she told me about a time where they were having one of their arguments, right? And my father was climbing up some stairs, right? And she said that she went to put her hand on his shoulder. And then he pulled away, right? Because he didn't want her to grab his shoulder. And what happened is she fell. She fell back, right, down the stairs. And then she told me that she was pregnant with me at that time, and the belly actually moved to the side, right? I don't know how I survived that. Must be a miracle. Um, and so that is one example to highlight how my experience in the womb was, right? Um, and my parents also told me that when I was born, that I was basically a nervous child. They said that I looked around, my shifted my eyes. My eyes were wide open, looking around, shifting back and forth. And that does make sense. That makes a lot of sense because uh, it was it was traumatic. It was the time in the womb was not a sanctuary like it's supposed to be, right? Um, so yeah, that does make a lot of sense. Okay, so early childhood trauma, right? From birth to 6 years old, and the child, it could be physical abuse, it can be sexual abuse, it can be it could be other types of trauma, right? Like a natural disaster, um, or war, right? Some parts of our world, sadly, many children are born into war torn communities, right? Where there's ongoing war and conflict. That can also cause trauma, early childhood trauma, to the child. So, one of the reasons, right, probably the most important reason why uh, trauma during early childhood is so hurtful to the child is because during this time the brain is developing, right? Um, it's going through a critical part of development, right? The different parts are coming into fruition, and everything happens in a very systematic, orderly fashion. And what happens with trauma is basically throwing a monkey wrench into the process, right? Uh, because now, let me talk about the stress response, right? What is the stress response? Uh, we have a built-in stress response, right, to help us when there's a real threat, right? When there's a real threat, right? Our nervous system, right, signals, right, for us to be ready, right? It hormones like cortisol, right, and adrenaline are pumped into the blood, right, to raise our heart rate, our blood pressure, dilate our pupils, and all things to get us ready, right, for that threat, right? Now, when the threat is gone, then another part of the nervous system, right, uh, brings everything back down, right, to an even level, right? That's how it normally works. Now, in childhood trauma, in early childhood trauma specifically, this alarm system, if you will, does not come back down, right? It's always it is stimulated so much by the abuse, right? It is stimulated so much by the trauma that it doesn't come down to an even level where it's supposed to be, right? It always stays above that and up to a high level. And what this does, it damages the brain, right? It damages parts of the brain like the amygdala, right? The amygdala is that which signals there's a threat, right? Tell it, oh, there's a threat. You have to be ready, right? You have to respond right now. You gotta either fight or flight, right? That's the job of the amygdala. And when it is overstimulated with trauma, what happens is that it'll stimulate on its own, right? Without any stimulus, right? No, it doesn't need a reason, right? Maybe, yeah, it just it's always on, right? And it might see, the child might see an angry face, right? Just by seeing an angry face, the amygdala will kick in, and the child will feel tense, and you know, and the heart will be pounding, and and the child will be kind of frozen, right, not knowing what to do. And another area of the brain that can be damaged, right, by early childhood trauma and the stress it causes is the prefrontal cortex, right? That is basically the thinking area of the brain. Um, Now that can be damaged, and the results are problems, right, in thinking, problems with reasoning, problems with concentration, solving problems, right? Those critical thinking skills that we need in life, right, to navigate through life, right, are negatively impacted, right? And I left you a link to an article that talks about this. Okay, if you want to read further on this. So as you can see, right, we have a damaged amygdala that is, reacting, overreacting to everything. So with no stimuli, it just reacts out of proportion to, the challenges that life naturally has, right? It overreacts to that, right? And then you have the prefrontal cortex, where the thinking and reasoning, right, the part that is supposed to keep the amygdala in check, right, because it's your thinking, right? This is the part of the brain that thinks and say, hey, look, this is not as bad as it looks, okay? We could take care of this. That part of the brain has been damaged, right? It can be damaged during early childhood trauma. So this is why it's so critical. This time in the child's life, right, from birth to 6 years old, and even before that, right, while the baby is still in the womb. Those are the most, actually the most critical, right? The most critical, because that development, that the brain is developing in a very delicate and systematic way. Okay, and what is needed there is stability, right, in order for that brain to develop healthy, in a healthy fashion. So what can be done? What can we do if we know that a child, has been the victim of early childhood trauma? What can be done? Um, well, remember, these these traumatic experiences happened, right? Uh, either there was a malfunctioning relationship, right? Either the caregiver was abusive, mistreated the child, assaulted the child in some way, um, or there was no relationship. Maybe there was neglect, right? Or the parent died, right? Maybe due to war, right? Or the parent died in some fashion, right? And that traumatizes the child, right? Or maybe the child experienced the caregiver being abused themselves, right? Maybe they experienced that. So, what can be done for the child? Well, a loving and supportive relationship, right, is what that child needs to come out of that trauma. Okay, but it's not going to be easy, right? It's not going to be easy. The child has been traumatized early in their lives. They need the opposite of that, basically. They need a loving, supportive relationship with a caring and loving caregiver, right? And like I say, it's not going to be easy because the child is not going to be open to that. The child is used to being hurt by their caregivers, right? In one way or another. So it's going to take time. The child will most likely turn away and not be receptive to our loving, caring ways. But we cannot give up on them, right? We have to persist. We have to persist with loving care and support. That is what will heal the wounds of early childhood trauma. So again, I left you a few links if you want to read further on what I said today. Then you could definitely click on those. And if you have any comments, maybe you suffered early childhood trauma yourself, like I did, like so many of us have, and you want to share, please share in the comments below. And if you know of anyone that has suffered early childhood trauma and how they dealt with it, where they helped, where you helped, did a loving person come into your life, right? Was it your other parent, or was it another family member, or another adult, a caring adult? Please share. Share in the comments below. And if you found this important to you, please give it a like. And if you're interested in hearing more about discussions like this one, please go ahead and subscribe, okay? All right. So I hope you found this helpful to you. I look forward to hearing from you. And I'll wish you a wonderful day. Take care. Bye.